I was lucky enough to be loaned a Crystal Light VR headset from Pimax for this review. The Crystal Light is Pimax's current entry-level PC VR headset. Though specs-wise, it's far from entry-level, featuring dual 2880 by 2880 pixel displays, supporting a refresh rate up to 120Hz, a wide 115-degree horizontal and 105-degree vertical field of view. This is the world's first headset to use aspheric lenses. It's a type of complex lens shape that reduces distortion, offers a large sweet spot and clarity for edge-to-edge image sharpness. The IPD is manually adjustable in the software between 58 and 72mm. IPD is the distance between your pupils and, when set correctly, ensures the image remains in focus. The Crystal Light uses inside-out tracking with 4 cameras on the headset. It comes with 2 hand controllers that suspiciously resemble the same design as Quest 2 controllers. We can take a closer look at those in a moment, but let's finish this unboxing first. And finally, let's take out the Crystal Light. The appearance is bulky, but at 815 grams is slightly lighter than the Valve Index that comes in at 843 grams. Now, since you are watching a sim racing channel, my main emphasis today will be demonstrating and discussing the headset for VR racing. Although the Pimax headsets are perfectly capable for room-scale standing gaming, I do get the impression that flight and racing VR enthusiasts are the main customers for these headsets. Let me cover the cable first so I can shove it out of the way. So it is 5 meters long, standard VR cable length really. We have plugs on the end, so we have USB Type-C and also display ports into your graphics card. So those are the 2 plugs, and on this breakout box there is a socket for the power supply that you would have seen in the unboxing video bit. I recorded the unboxing just over a week ago, and since then I've used it extensively, so it's no longer out of the box pristine. This has been now used, it's got collected some fingerprints and dust, etc. So if it looks a little bit grimy, it's because it has been used already, and I have recorded a bunch of footage that we will move on to in a moment. But I still want to give you a bit of a close look at this and talk about some of the features here. So we have foam interface front and rear, so quite a broad one at the front to try and carry the weight because it is quite front heavy because of how much it sticks out. I'm not so keen that it's just bare foam. Now, I didn't find this one too uncomfortable. I remember when I first got into VR with the HTC Vive, that was also foam. First generation headsets just used bare foam, and I found that a little bit irritating against my skin. I didn't find a problem with this one, but nevertheless, considering the price of this headset, I think they could have done better and had a material cover over at least the front piece. Don't mind about the rear, but that's against my skin, and I would prefer it to have a nicer sort of like cover over there. They are velcroed on, both the front and rear, so you can technically remove them and replace them with third-party options, and they do exist. But there you go. Not the worst thing in the world, but I have to say they could have done a little bit better on that. So we have 2 mics. So those are the mic holes down here. There's 2 buttons on here, so that's an on-off button and that's a volume control rocker switch. Another look at the cameras. So the 2 cameras down there and 2 up there for the inside-out tracking and for the controllers. Top strap is Velcro, nice and broad. It's not padded. I think they could have put a bit of padding on there. I would imagine really that would have been better, but it's fully adjustable. We have off-ear speakers, and kind of similar to what you get, you know, with say the Quest headsets, like the Quest 2 and 3, similar sort of quality I'd say, with the sound output, which is perfectly fine. I quite like it. I don't like on-ear headphones with VR because it just adds more heat. When there's enough heat going on with this on your head, covering your ears I find kind of just amplifies the heat build-up. So I'm glad that they are off-ear. And I don't like using headphones with VR either, or kind of, you know, plug-in earphones. I prefer it like this, and it's perfectly fine. There you go, another look at the lenses, glass lenses, opposed to a lot of VR headsets that just use plastic lenses. So that's kind of nice because that's obviously going to be more scratch resistant opposed to plastic. So that's very good. Obviously a nose guard, that's nice and soft. So that does block out the light very well. The head strap is very solid. Obviously adjustable dial on the back, and that just locks it in perfectly. We have this beefy head strap and substantial padding at the front to try and kind of compensate for the weight balance. The Pimax controllers are pretty much an identical copy of the Quest 2 controllers, so I'm assuming they paid some sort of license for this design. There is a slight difference on the panel here. We've got an extra button on the Pimax one, and it's not the same joystick. That's sort of concave, that's sort of convex on that one. But the buttons feel the same, the joystick feels the same. The triggers, same tension, same feel identically, as are the those grip buttons as well. Pimax ones are slightly lighter, and that could be because it does have a rechargeable battery inside, where on the Quest 2 controllers you just used AA batteries and you could replace them. So you do charge this one. There is a charge port just there, and it does make them just slightly lighter, but otherwise these things are identical. Performance of these controllers, which I've only briefly used in some VR games, seems to be on par with like the Quest 2 controllers, so just fine, tracked perfectly well, and no problems with that. So yeah, these are fine handy controllers, nice and ergonomic. So yeah, these are going to do the job well. If you're into some sort of stand-up gaming action, then you will be very happy with these. I must admit, after discovering the specs of the mini LED panels featured in this headset, I wasn't sure if my 3090 GPU, that by today's standards is considered a mid-range performer, would be sufficient to run VR racing games without any hitches. I'm not new to VR, I've owned plenty of headsets in the last 6 years, but the Crystal Light is moving 17 million pixels. For context, a 4K monitor is 8.3 million pixels, and the Quest 3 headset runs to 9.11 million pixels. According to Pimax, a graphics card of the caliber I'm rocking would be bang on the recommended requirements. Unfortunately, the page hasn't been updated for more current up-to-date hardware, but it shouldn't be too difficult to extrapolate where an unlisted GPU would land in this chart, comparative to the one shown. I don't have a comprehensive demonstration across a bunch of racing games. I have some results for Automobilista 2 and Le Mans Ultimate I can show you, and of course the more powerful your hardware, the better the outcome. Before we move on to that, I do want to share my impressions of the Pimax Crystal Light. Firstly, it doesn't feel especially heavy to wear, and I didn't need to clamp it down with much force for a secure fit. It's not the most comfortable headset I've owned, but neither is it particularly uncomfortable. I think the comfort is really down to the large size of the headset. It does feel noticeably more bulky on my head compared to my Quest 3, for instance. But I had no issue that prevented me from using the Crystal Light for long sessions, and did not experience any eye strain or tiredness in my eyes. The broad design of the headset allows glasses to be worn quite easily, and the lenses of my glasses did not touch the headset lenses. There was a little bit of pressure from the foam padding pushing down on my glasses, but not enough to cause any problems for me. The large field of view is the USP of the Pimax headsets, and it's impressive, not only horizontally but also vertically when that wide horizontal plane spans across the view in front of you. It's a big upgrade over the Quest 3 field of view, and indeed all other headsets I've used. Maybe this picture from Pimax provides a more useful point of reference. Thanks to the aspheric lenses, the image from the Crystal Light is excellent. There's no glare, I can see edge-to-edge image sharpness with no distortion, and the sweet spot is huge. I can jiggle the headset around and the picture remains in focus. I looked closely for any screen door effect and wasn't able to perceive any. The panels provide a very sharp image, the colours are vibrant. If I were to offer my review verdict solely on the visuals my eyeballs have been exposed to, then this is definitely my most impressive VR experience, bar none. The expansive field of view is ideal for close racing. I can see the full width of the track and the scenery whipping past, enhancing the presence of speed. Car interiors and dashboard instruments are detailed and sharp. While racing, you're constantly looking far down the track, planning the next move, and again, the high resolution is an advantage, producing a sharp image of distant track details. I can easily read the marker boards, observe the corners coming up, and individual cars down the track. The combination of wide field of view and visual sharpness goes beyond immersion. There are real benefits here for VR racing over other headsets. The enhanced field of view provides more spatial awareness, and the image clarity means distant track features are easily observable. And when you're flying down a track at high speed, surrounded by other cars, and a whole lot of action is going on, the more you can see is always going to be an advantage. Do bear in mind the recorded footage is not a true representation of the headset's visuals. From the seated position in the headset and looking straight ahead, I'm able to see both wing mirrors in full and a little bit more besides. Pimax uses the OpenXR API. It's an alternative to the OpenVR standard SteamVR uses. OpenXR works with all Steam VR games, so there's no compatibility issues. The advantage of OpenXR is it offers additional tuning features to improve VR performance. You do need to remember to always use the Pimax software to launch your Steam VR games, otherwise it will default to OpenVR if you use the Steam Library Launcher to open your games. I discovered the Pimax Crystal Light does make good use of the OpenXR optimizations. The Crystal Light supports a refresh rate of 72, 90 or 120 Hz, plus 90 Hz upscale. Essentially, upscale is doing the same kind of thing that FSR or DLSS does. The game is rendered at a lower resolution and using some fancy algorithm upscales the image in an effort to maintain good image quality and reducing the workload on the graphics card. According to Pimax, they quote results that claim to improve VR FPS in some games by up to 40%. Now, a consideration to note is when viewing these frame counters, I'm recording the game footage on the same PC, and while I'm recording, I'm taking about a 10 FPS or so hits. The game does run smoother for me when I'm not capturing all of this in OBS. I would estimate 30% improvement for me in Automobilista 2 using upscale, and it did enable me to maintain 90 FPS, where without using upscale, the frame rate was bouncing around 65 to 70 FPS. Using upscale doesn't come without a penalty. The picture is slightly softer, the difference is subtle enough that I don't really notice it, and the increase in performance and stable frame rate easily outweighs that small visual downgrade. Another setting that affects the frame rate and visual quality is the render resolution. You have 4 options: low, medium, high or custom. For AMS2, medium quality was the most appropriate setting for my 3090, and don't forget that 10 FPS loss due to OBS recording. In normal circumstances, I'm maintaining a solid 90 FPS. Fixed foveated rendering, or FFR for short, is the final tool available for tuning performance in the Pixel Play app. When active, it can lower the GPU overhead by maintaining the visual fidelity at the centre of the picture and lowers it at the edges of the scene, the areas outside of your direct line of sight. AMS2 doesn't support FFR, but Le Mans Ultimate does. Unfortunately, the monitor screen capture is a bit weird in this game and appears stretched and zoomed in, so you will need to look past that. I can assure you the game looks just fine when viewed through the headset. Observe this area. You can see the difference. With FFR, the graphics are blocky compared to the race where FFR is not used. The centre of the screen, the visuals are rendered at the same quality for both. The GPU utilisation is substantially lower when FFR is on, fully demonstrating it's doing exactly what it's meant to. The graphics card is under less stress rendering the scene. We're showing a marginal uptick to the FPS, but I would have hoped for better here. I suspect we're being CPU limited by the game engine. Le Mans Ultimate uses the old rFactor 2 engine, and it isn't really well optimised to support the many cores of modern gaming CPUs. I have an 8-core AMD 7800 X3D CPU. Running the same race with fewer cars I'm sure would help here. That said, I still had a good time in this race, and it was perfectly playable. Hopefully that was all useful information. The takeaway here is you don't need the very best PC to operate the Pimax Crystal Lite. There's plenty of levers in the Pimax software that have shown to be effective ways to optimize performance. Now certainly, to get the most out of the visual fidelity from this headset, just like any VR headset in fact, the more powerful your system, the better it will be. But it was great, I was able to manage, games looked good and ran well for me. With my time using the Pimax Crystal Lite, I can conclude it is a fantastic sim racing headset. The increased field of view is a big upgrade and enhances VR and makes it an even more engaging experience than ever. After running a session with this headset and then going back to my Quest 3, which I also enjoy, though suddenly the slimmer field of view seems shockingly restrictive in comparison. I do warn you, you will get spoilt after experiencing the Crystal Lite, and you'll want VR to be like this as standard.